Hey guys, Terence here with an unexpected kind of off schedule Let's Talk Reef. It's just going to be me today, but I'm going to be interviewing Dana Riddle and talking about the sky. I think this is one of the live streams that everybody's been waiting for. I've seen it out on social media over and over, people saying, I hear the sky is good, I know that you're looking at it and you say it's good, but I'm really just waiting to see the data from people like Dana Riddle as well as Ryan over at BRS. So Dana's actually had the sky for quite some time, and we're going to bring him on here in a few minutes. In the meantime, welcome everybody on a Sunday. Thank you for joining me. We're going to have a great week this week. I've got some more surprises for you. We'll definitely be coming on the air as usual, maybe a day early, I don't know, this week with another Let's Talk Reef. And in the meantime, we're going to talk about the sky today. On top of Dana coming, I'm also going to announce later in the program when the sky is going to come on sale. So as we often do, we wait, we have the anticipation build, and then all of a sudden it is available for sale everywhere pretty much at the exact same time. And it's not far off, and I can tell you, supplies are definitely limited. There are many things that have become out of our control due to the situation in the world, due to the supply chain, due to shipping, due to many things you may be hearing out there. And I think we've done a really good job at getting quite a few of these sky ready for you guys, and we'll continue to be releasing them afterward. But in the initial orders that go in, it's going to be on a quantity that we're pretty certain is not going to stay in stock for long. So you're going to want to hear when they go for sale if you're really interested in getting 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of these sky to put over your tank. You're going to be, one of the lucky ones if you get one, is my opinion. I think it's going to be quite tough. But they will all go on sale everywhere at the same time. Even local fish stores can sell them at that time. And then they will ship about 1 week after your order goes in. They're actually in transit right now to those dealers as we speak. Some of them have landed at certain docks across the country. Some of them will be there all throughout this week. And then all of a sudden they will all be available to go out and to ship to all of the customers nationwide pretty much. So I see I got a lot of people here in the show. Thank you guys for joining me. Trent and Eric Schulist, the master video guy, the master 3D modeling guy is here with us who did the sky video. Thank you, Eric, for coming. LAX Aquarium, Chris down there in LA, thank you for joining us. Nano Joe, Josh Hoover, all of you guys, thank you for joining us on a Sunday to talk about lights, to talk about LED lights, to talk about the sky, and to hear everything there is to hear. At this point from Dana, we do have some data to show you as well. Not everything has been completely tested, and he certainly hasn't written his final review yet. But you'll be able to hear here first what he thinks of the sky. So, I don't know, do you think we should get started, Vincent? Let's bring Dana in. Let's just go ahead and get this thing started. Is Dana ready? Okay, Vincent's over here running the show for me. All right, Dana, put that camera down, buddy, a little bit. We don't want Kilroy, right, we want Dana.
Let's do that. There we go. Give me just a second.
There we go. Right. Well, welcome again, Dana, to Neptune Systems Show. To Let's Talk Reef, and it's been quite a while. You're one of the first ones that we had on the program, and I promise to those of you out there who said that last time I cut Dana off too much, that this time I'm not going to do it. So we may go long, but that's okay. How you doing, Dana?
That's fine. I'm doing great, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. For those of you that don't know, Dana Riddle has been in the science side and in the hobby for many, many, many years. He is one of the early timers. He's one of the guys who started out way in the beginning, keeping corals, keeping fish, keeping animals alive in aquariums. He did a bunch of studies out in Hawaii on coral reefs and the lighting on coral reefs, and it's the basis for a lot of his opinions and understanding of what lighting does on aquariums. And he also was the Aquarist of the Year in the first MACNA that I ever attended, and the first time I met Dana, which was in 2011 in Iowa. So there's a little background on Dana. He's now living landlocked, if you don't count Lake Lanier. He's landlocked in Georgia. So how's the move been, Dana? How's it been? It's been about a year and a half or so?
Actually, it's been closer to 4 years
Oh my
since
goodness.
we moved from Hawaii. Yeah, and you know, I went through culture shock moving to Hawaii, and then went through culture shock moving back. So still getting adjusted, but family's here, and actually, I'm glad to be back in Georgia.
Yeah, well, I love Georgia. As you know, I lived there for a couple of years, and it's definitely a beautiful area of the country. But, you know, hey, so you've had aquariums. You had aquariums before. You moved to Atlanta. You started up an aquarium. You've had a couple of journeys. Tell us about the journey. I guess it's 4 years. My bad, time flies. Over the last few years with your aquariums there in Georgia.
Yeah, first of all, I had to build a lab. So when we had the house built, I had to make sure we had a basement, and I moved all the equipment from Hawaii. And that took quite a few months to get the laboratory designed and built. And that went in, got an aquarium set up. My girlfriend asked if it ever snowed in Georgia. I said no. We had 13 inches of snow. Lost power for 3 days and lost the tank.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
I started again. Then that tank was doing really, really well. Last October, the tropical storm roared through Atlanta, lost power for 3 days again, and lost the tank.
Oh.
So I have a whole house generator installed now. That's not going to happen again. So the tank is actually doing really, really well. I have 2 of the skylights on the tank, and I'm very
We're going to
pleased
get to that.
with them.
I can assure you we'll get to that for sure.
Okay.
So tell me a little, I mean, I think a lot of people think of, and of course you see people on the internet, and you've seen Ryan do some testing and whatnot. So in your lab that you have, tell us all the, I mean, you can use all the, you know, the science-y talk or whatever for all the equipment and whatnot that you have. Like, impress everybody on here about all the cool stuff that you have to investigate lighting or water or whatever it is.
Okay, well, the laboratory has about $100,000 worth of equipment that I've accumulated since I really got serious in the hobby in the early 90s. I've got spectrometers that can analyze the light. I export that data into an Excel sheet that has a proprietary program that I wrote to analyze the light. So I can look at the different colors, the spectrum of the light. I bought a par meter back before Apogee was offering their less expensive par meters, and the Lycor I have, I think that thing was like $1,500, and now you can get one that's just as good for $500. I think the big thing is the fluorometer that I have. It's actually a photosynthesis meter, and I can look at how the light affects the rate of photosynthesis in zooxanthellae.
Very cool.
Now that everything is up and running in the lab, finally, I hope to get back and get into some really serious research again.
So now the rate of photosynthesis in the zooxanthellae and which ones grow and whatnot, that really affects the coloring or the color up of the various corals, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, it's when you get toward the photosaturation point, which is where increasing the amount of light doesn't increase the rate of photosynthesis, that seems to be the point at which some of the colorful proteins are expressed by the coral. Not all, but some of them. You've got highlight colors and low light colors, so you have to. Some are not affected by light, while other ones certainly are.
Okay, so basically, this is like a little man cave of yours on your property that you can go down into and grab a 12-pack of Miller Lite or whatever and get away from everything.
I can definitely get away from everything down here. I can lose myself in this place.
Awesome. That's so cool. And for those of you that don't know, I didn't mention it either. Dana actually moderates. He is the moderator of the lighting forum out on Reef to Reef. So If after this particular live stream, we'll post out a link to this live stream too for other people to see the recorded version. And at the same time, if you have any questions after this live stream is over to ask Dana, that's a great place to go do it. And also see some of the other questions that he answers about lighting and reviews that Dana has done. At this point, Dana, I know you don't have a review done completely on the Sky yet, but that is going to be coming, and it will be out there on Reef to Reef. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Excellent. Excellent. So LED lighting with reef aquariums. I think the first lights I ever saw might have been at MACNA 2011 with Ecotech Marine. I think that's might be the first, the Gen 1 LEDs from Ecotech might have been at that particular show. I think so. But lighting in general for LEDs has been around now for 10, 11, 12 years, and really, got into the mainstream maybe 8 years ago, right? So the progression of LEDs, what were your thoughts when they first came out?
The first experience I had with LEDs was actually 2001. There was a small company, I think it was Minnesota, sent me a very small board with probably 50 LEDs and asked me to look at it and give my thoughts on if it would work for an aquarium. But it was just the red and white LEDs. A few years later, PFO, I actually think PFO offered their LED lights. I think that was 2007.
Yeah, it started. I think that's where it started, and then they really had something available, really that hit the market around 2008, 2009. Really, they started to really start to push those out there. So, what did you think about those first lights? Were you just kind of like, yeah, this is not ready for prime time?
No, actually, I thought the PFO light was pretty good, but it was mainly for the power savings.
I see.
And in Hawaii, obviously required air conditioning, and I was running 400 watt metal halide lights, and my power bill was like $500 a month.
Wow.
And when I switched over to the LEDs, the power bill went way down, and a lot of that was just due not to, so I didn't have to run the air conditioning.
Well, that's an interesting point, because at the same time, a lot of people even back then, even if the LEDs were not super powerful, many people's tanks didn't need as much power as metal halides could even provide at that time, right? Because many people weren't running high light demand, corals, weren't running, some of the acros and whatnot at 20-inch depth that they do now. And so you could definitely get the power savings then, probably even more so than now, because now you're running 200 watt still LEDs. It's better, but back then I think you could get a lot done with LEDs, just simply because most people didn't have clams and super light intense animals.
Right. I was restricted to the animals that I could get in Hawaii, and there's no acropora. Well, I shouldn't say none. They've recently discovered some acroporas growing off the coast of Kona. But, as far as getting those in Hawaii, it's illegal to have a reef tank out there. It has to be a research permit to do that. So, I was pretty limited, but, it worked for the corals that I had access to.
You poor thing. You poor thing. You could walk out your front porch and go collect your own corals for your tank. Oh, yeah. Oh.
Yeah, and live rock. It was a tough life there, believe me.
Yeah, no doubt. So the lights evolved a lot. Obviously, the PFO went aside, right? And then AI started really pushing their lights, the AI Soul lights, and then, as I said, Ecotech came around and made their light. So it seems like you've been a pretty pro. You're not one of these set in stone, gotta be metal halide kind of guys. You've been pretty pro LED all along then, I would imagine.
I think LEDs have a lot of advantages. Obviously the other light sources have worked in the past. But I think in my situation and most people's situation, LEDs would probably be the light of choice. I know there are still some people that debate that, You know,
Pretty heftily on that Reef to Reef channel that you or that Reef to Reef group that you're in. There's some people in there that are really passionate about that metal halide stuff, buddy.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. It's not to their advantage either.
I've read some of those conversations. I was like, wow, okay, it's like this is this is like Egypt and Israel. It's like some peace
Yeah,
here, So okay, so the lights have been slowly evolving, as they moved along. But what's really key for for the animals, because lots of different lights can work, and we have lots of different animals. So is there something specific that not just makes them live, but you think makes them thrive better than something else when it comes to lighting in general, but maybe even specifically with LEDs?
well, all lighting sources suffer from the same issues, intensity being one of them. Obviously, you can overlight a tank, and that was one of the drawbacks in the early days of LEDs is they didn't produce a whole lot of light. The technology has come a long ways in the last few years. So yeah, the LEDs they can now produce enough light. In a lot of cases, probably a little more than you actually need. But you have that ability to dim those and ramp them up, and that's a great advantage. Secondary.
So to follow on for the animals' sake, right? Again, back to the animals. So you mentioned the ramping, you mentioned the intensity, and what about, I mean, from the spectrum side, is there, because I hear from a lot of people, right? You'll hear from some coral growers that they're like, yeah, I just run everything all blue. And other guys are like, well, I run them, I run these corals first at 10K in the morning, and then I run them all blue, in the afternoon. And so from what you know about the animals and the benefits of different lighting that can hit them, whether it comes from the environment like you've studied in Hawaii or otherwise from your own experience, is there anything to any of these kind of recipes that people have in terms of intensity, varying the intensity as the ramp up or the spectrum?
As far as the spectrum goes, full spectrum is fine. You don't want to overdo it with a red. Try to keep the red at no more than 15% or so. And personally, I run a lot of blue. The coral coloration has been a passion of mine for a number of years, and it's pretty definite that in many cases that the blue light can induce the fluorescence or some of the reflective chromoproteins. So I'm a big fan of blue light, and that's the way I run my tank. I have the full spectrum in the morning for 3 or 4 hours, and then I go into the blue for the rest of the day.
Yeah, that's kind of, I mean, I think some people swap that around, but I think that mixing that up, I think, is shown to create some pretty nice tanks when you mix up, not just the intensity, but the spectrum throughout the day. Definitely helps in that. What is the comparison? We talk about DLI and whatnot, and I know we've talked about before, how much light should the tank, kind of get during a day. So I'll give you an example. I have a tank that is majority SPS, majority Acropora in the tank. I don't. The only thing I've ever been able to go by is the anecdotal experience of places like Worldwide Corals or what have you. How does somebody pick what their light schedule should be? How long it should be? Do they get the PAR rating and then multiply it by the hours? How would you suggest somebody go about doing that?
Well, let's explain what DLI is. It's the daily light integral, and the analogy is if you're in a rainstorm, PAR or the PPFD, the photon flux density, is actually account of the number of photons falling, and that's analogous to the number of raindrops falling. But you're really not interested in how many raindrops are falling in a given time. You want to know the total over the course of the day, how many inches of rain you got. So that's what the DLI does. It's pretty simple to calculate. If you've got the Apex system, you can go back and look at that light. It takes just a couple of minutes to figure out what your DLI is. Now, in nature, in the winter in Hawaii at a shallow depth, the DLI is about 17, 18. And during the summer, it can be as high as 35. But you don't need to run your lights anywhere near that high. I'm running at the bottom of my tank. The DLI is 7, and that's with a photo period of about 12 hours. And at the top of the tank, where the light intensity is going to be a little higher, the DLI is around 11. So,
does it surprise you?
That,
oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
But does it surprise me that we can illuminate a tank with that little light?
No, no. I mean,
no.
That's certainly one question. But I was saying, does it surprise you that the industry in general, and certainly many of the videos we see from Bulk Reef Supply and from others, seems to be so hyper-focused on just what your PAR is? But if that's the case, it's like going out in a rainstorm, like you said, and going, yeah, there's a lot of rain falling right now, and then going back inside, but not really knowing how much. It could only be raining for 2 minutes, right? And there really hardly any rain fell. And I just keep coming back to this myself in that you know what the DLI is in your tank. You've already considered it as being important. We understand that the lighting that falls on an aquarium is cumulative, is what you're saying. Yet everybody seems to be taking these point, looks at light. And which is important, right? Because you can't also overload your light, on any one point. But that's just part of the equation. And nobody seems to be really talking about, okay, well, how long should my photo period be? What should my ramp up be? When should they start? When should they end? Based on what these, PAR ratings, are. And comparing it to research like you've done, or even just best practices that maybe you put out on Reef to Reef. So doesn't that surprise you a little bit? I know it does me.
Yeah, it does. It really should be considered. One other point is the light intensity at the bottom of the tank. You probably want to maintain that at 175 or 200 PAR. And at the top, obviously it's going to be higher. But try not to go above 400 or 500. That's when you really start over illuminating a tank, and you get into a situation where the zooxanthellae are maxed out photosynthetically, and increasing the amount of light is not going to do any good.
Right.
So anyway, with a photo period, I don't think that there's any reason to go more or less than 12 hours. I mean, that's pretty natural. That's what we see in nature. And, that's what I run mine at. Of course, opinions vary. And, people can have, many roads lead to Rome. And, there are different approaches. But personally, that's what I do. It's a 12-hour photo period with a DLI of 7 at the bottom and 11 at the top.
Okay. Well, it's all interesting stuff. And I know, many people on this channel really appreciate you coming on and giving this kind of like more detailed kind of, nerdy kind of stuff for sure on lighting. And that is definitely one of the ones that it just kind of baffles me that we don't pay a little bit more attention to that, so that when we're making changes to our lighting, we actually know if the DLI is going up or down, because we could change the photo period by a half an hour, change the intensity by 3%, and we don't necessarily know, right? What,
Exactly.
Do we have more light or do we have less light? Unless you look at it from a DLI perspective.
Yeah, DLI was actually calculated initially in greenhouses where it was critical, to know exactly how much light they had, and it eventually migrated over to the marine aquarium part. I think I was probably the first one to introduce that into the hobby. And that's been, I don't know, 10 years ago. The way time flies, I have a hard time keeping up with it. But
This is
yeah,
for sure.
I'm kind of I'm kind of surprised that DLI is not discussed more, especially with the ramping ability you have now with the LEDs.
Right. And that you can do that stuff too, like you said, with the Apex, because it's logging it ongoing throughout the day. So you, even if you have a variable lighting schedule where you have ramp ups and ramp downs and ups and downs throughout the day, because it's logging it, you actually get a real time, or not real time, but an end of day DLI that then you can make changes and then see after you make those changes exactly what your change in DLI is, which just seems to me is super important. Okay, so let's get right to the sky then, okay? Because that's what a lot of people are here to talk about, right? Is obviously we announced a few months back. I don't even remember exactly when it was, the SKY as a Reef Aquarium Light, and I don't know. Some people were kind of stunned. Other people thought that we must be just taking somebody else's light and sticking our name on it. There's all kinds of different speculation on stuff out there. So we very early on wanted to get your feedback because you are, one of the experts in this area. So we sent you out a couple of lights, and you've got a super busy schedule, lots of stuff going on in your life. Kind of give us just an overview, because you look at so many lights. What are your thoughts on it? I mean, I've got people here in the chat. Some of them are going like, "Oh yeah, we must have paid Dana to do this." So dispel some of that and tell us what you thought about the light. Just freestyle. Tell us what you think.
Okay. First of all, I do this testing for free. If I get a light, I'm going to test it. I'm going to give you my honest opinion on it. I don't get paid to do this. Over the years, I've gotten a lot of lights that were junk, and privately, I'll tell you that the SKY is not in that category by any sense. First of all, I think size matters when it comes to an LED panel. The SKY is a fairly large LED light, and let me look at my notes. It's roughly 10 by 14 inches, and that's a fairly large panel. And I have two of them over 120-gallon aquarium, and I'm growing SPS corals. I've got a Walt Disney Aquapora and a couple of rainbows in there that are doing really, really well.
Rainbow tenuous?
I'm sorry?
Are they a rainbow tenuous, you mean?
The tenuous, I don't ID corals. That's possibly what it is.
Okay.
It's multicolor. It has a yellow-green base with red and purple tips. It could be a tenuous. I try to stay away from that because corals can morph so differently in an aquarium, and what looks like a tenuous to me could be an Austera to someone else. So anyway, yeah, it's a rainbow Acropora, and it's doing really well. I'm really, really happy with the tank right now.
So yeah, pretty much Dana can call up anybody in the industry and say, I want your light, and put whatever light he wants over his tank. And no, we did not pay Dana. Did Dana get the lights for free? And yeah, in all transparency, absolutely. Dana's doing testing on the lights, and we want Dana to test these lights long term. And to be honest with you, I had no clue whether or not Dana would put them over his personal tank or not, because that was not part of any of the discussion that we had. It was just, hey, give us some thoughts on this particular light. So it does make me, of course, happy, super happy, and all of us here at Neptune Systems super happy, Dana, that you decided to put these over your personal tank. That is an amazing endorsement in and of itself. You're looking at all of these different lights. Kind of compare and contrast if you can. I know what I like I basically describe lights in the industry in three different areas. One is a spotlight type light where it comes from a very small light origination point, right? So, these are the spotlight with the multi-LED chip in them, and those tend to light a tank fairly well, a lot of sparkle in the tank and whatnot, but they have they have a limitation with some of the shadowing. So I look at them more like they're kind of the sun without the atmosphere. Would you kind of agree with that kind of assessment?
Well, it's definitely a point source of light. It's going to be like a metal halide where you've got an intense area of light, a hot spot, and then the intensity falls off as you move away from the point source. And yeah, you're right. There are some shadowing issues with those lights. And
but the mix is
generally,
good.
they're fairly small.
Yes.
The spotlights are fairly small. So.
So they have an advantage. They have the spotlight. They're kind of small. They definitely look really nice, and the color mixing on them is generally really good because all the colors mix right there at the point source, right? So there's that methodology. Then there's what I've been calling kind of like the puck style methodology for quite some time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Some of the lights that I've tested. There'll be two pucks, and a puck being described is generally it's shaped like a hockey puck, and there are multi-chips in each one, but you're still dealing with two point sources where you've got the intersection of the light beams toward the bottom of the tank, and they'll work. There's no arguing that, but I think there's a better way to go with the lights.
So they often will have an issue with sometimes color separation because the further you get the different colors apart from each other, if you don't have really good mixing or some sort of a mixing panel or something of that nature, you tend to get this color separation, and then it creates these things like the disco ball effect and whatnot. Isn't that where that comes from?
Yeah. That can be very distracting with some lights. You can actually see the separation of the spectra, and it's called the caustic network. It's called shimmer or glitter or whatever. But with the caustic network, with some of these puck lights, you can see that separation, and it can be kind of distracting.
Right, for sure.
Hey, look at this. I don't particularly like it.
Hey, you got a fan on here too. I know one of your biggest fans is here right now on the live stream. Ryan just checked in onto the live stream, so I know he's watching the show right now. Which is, hey, that's that's humbling for me. I got Ryan, from BRS watching Terence's live stream, so that's pretty cool.
Hi Ryan. How you doing?
So then the next kind of light that I look at is these panel lights of some sort, right? So we have. For quite some time, we've had lights. I mean, the previous one, the puck style, would be so, and it's not to say one thing good or bad about any light, but the first point source would be like a Kessel light. Let's be straight. Second one would be like an AI light or an Ecotech light would be running that way, right? And the third one would be the third kind of type or category. Are these flat panel types of lights, and some of them have been around for a long time. Like Orfec has made a panel light, for instance, for quite some time, with quite a number of discrete LEDs, and that's more or less what the Sky is. But if you could kind of put the Sky in, not just in, obviously it's in that last group, but talk about advantages or disadvantages between any of them. Could you give any kind of feedback on that and what you see? Because we understand how all of these different ones work.
Yeah, the panel lights would be my choice for a luminaire. They obviously size matters when it comes to these panels. Also, with some of the diffusing panels that you can get with those now, you get a good color blend, even though you've got, actually the panel light is a multi-point source, but with these diffusers, you really get a good blend. And I've got some data, and I think that was in part of the report I sent to you, or maybe it wasn't. I took a spectrometer and looked at the spectrum of light at different wave intensities, meaning the ripple effect on the top of the water, where you would expect to see separation of the spectrum. And the spectrometer couldn't see it. The blend was so good on this light that
So,
the spectrometer could not pick up on that.
so to kind of paraphrase what you're saying is that sometimes you can take a spectrometer and just stick it in one spot, right, in a tank, and you're going to get whatever it is in that particular spot, right? Now, someone's assumption of a great light would be if I move that 6 inches to the right or 8 inches to the left, I'd want to get the exact same spectrum, right, in everywhere that I pretty much go. What we have seen, or at least I've seen through seeing some of Ryan's videos, which I thought were really good, especially he has some real time, he shows it in real time on some of his videos, is that with many times with these lights with the discrete LEDs, just like the Sky has, right? It's discrete LEDs that are spaced out. Most of the time when you see that happen, you see a really bad discrepancy of spectrum between different points. Now, I didn't see in your data that you had where you showed the spectrum, you know, differential or non-differential at different points. Is that what you're trying to say? You did measure it in different points and it was even?
Yes, yes, yeah, it looked really good. If the spectrometer would be able to pick up the different wavelengths, and if there was a separation, I would see a spike in one part of the spectrum. Say the blue might spike up and then the red would spike. And the spectrometer, I was measuring that every 5 milliseconds. So it'd definitely be able to see the spectral separation and that ripple effect or the shimmer or whatever you tend to call it. But yeah, the blending's very, very good. To me, it looks a lot like some of the blending that you would get with a long light source, like maybe a fluorescent lamp.
Like a T5, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Very similar to T5. Well, I think we have one of the graphs here. Let's start looking at a couple of these graphs. I'd like to look at the spread graphs starting, you know, with the PAR rating starting at the surface. So you mounted the Sky at 9.5 inches off the water level, from what I read, right? And I know I was blown away when I was at Mark Levinson's house and we were mounting these up there, and it was some of the first PAR readings that you know, that I'd seen on his tank, and you know, they're well over 1,000 PAR right there at the water surface. And one of the things, you know, that I saw when I looked at this chart, which the color is a little bit different than yours because I increased the size, and it's very hard to see on the right-hand side there, but I believe it says 1,000 to 1,500, and then 500 to 1,000 or something. Vincent, is that what it says?
Yeah, 500 to 1,000.
Yeah, unfortunately, when you scale up something in Excel, it doesn't scale up the the legend. But you know, right at the surface, you know, you're seeing a little bit of hot spotting, is what I can tell, right? But it's to be expected when you're that close to the LED, right?
Right. Now, these were taken immediately below the surface, like just a couple of millimeters, and this does not take into account the refraction caused by any water waves. That's going to alter that light pattern. This was with a still surface.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to look at. So if you've got a lot of surface motion, there we go. Now, yeah, we got this legend up where I can read it. Thank you. If you got a lot of water motion at the top, yeah, it's going to you know, spread that light out some.
So this light was mounted.
I'll tell you.
This light was also mounted in a tub, right? So it's not in glass, and you did that intentionally. Why?
Yeah, I did that. I had a 90-gallon tank that I was using for testing, and the PAR sensor that I use is cosine corrected, and it picks up light coming in from a sharp angle. So I was having problems getting reflection off the glass, and you know, it was actually throwing the numbers off some. Now, they are real world numbers. You're going to see a reflection off the glass, and especially in the corners. And I think that's one good point about these large panels, is they can spread that light out. You will have some reflection off the side glass, and you know, that's going to even things out too. But you know, I was looking strictly at the intensity of the light, trying to get an idea of what it could do without throwing all these variables into the mix.
Now, one of the interesting
So
things that you mentioned is this, glass reflection, and I just want to touch on that real briefly here because it just sparked something in my mind that somebody told me out in the wild, and you can probably comment on this too with your experience out in the field, is when you have the wider type of light, because you're casting so many more light rays coming out and hitting the glass and getting so much more reflected light out of that too, it gets a chance to reflect down and reflect off sand, which then reflects back up into the corals,
Right.
which then affects more coral tissue percentage on the organism, which then promotes better health and growth. That's not my words. I've heard that from one other person in the industry who was talking about the reflected light, even in nature.
Yeah, that's called upwelling light. That's when the light is reflected off the surface and comes back up, or from an angle. Generally, I like a white sand bed because it reflects the light very nicely. But generally, upwelling light is about 10% of the light that is falling downwards. So you get that upwelling light of roughly, maybe 10 or 15% that illuminates the bottom of the corals, plus what you get reflected from the glass.
Excellent. Hey, Vincent, throw up the 10 inch.
I'm sorry?
I was telling Vincent to throw up the next image.
Oh, okay.
This is the one that I think is the most relevant, I think, for a lot of reef keepers, especially SPS keepers, because at 10 inches below the surface is kind of the world in which a lot of corals in our aquariums kind of live, right? Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
So, what you can see here, that he's going to probably blow up the legend on that for us as well. But this is 10 inches below the water surface, or about just under 20 inches from the light. And the evenness of this is striking to me, and it's also right in the sweet spot for those people. Again, these are at like 100% levels, right, Dana?
Right. This is at 100% on all counts.
Yeah, exactly. So there you can see that you've got, a really nice, even around 400 par right there at 10 inches with everything at 100%, which is, awesome. I mean, what's the width on that, Vincent? Looks like about 24 inches or so, 23 inches, something like that, square.
22 and a half.
Yeah, that you're getting that even light without any reflection coming in there. So it's definitely it's definitely for those SPS keepers a really sweet spot area. I mean, that's my opinion. I mean, your thoughts on that, Dana, on this 10-inch one?
Yeah, that's something I looked at. The recommended spread on this light was 24 by 30 inches. And when I tested, I found that was right on the money. Actually, it was a little bit conservative. I found that it was just, maybe 2 or 3 inches broader than your recommendation. Mm-hmm. But yeah, your advertising is right on the money.
Excellent.
So it's impressive.
Good.
You did your homework.
When the science guy tells the marketing guy that it's okay, then it's good. It's good news. Okay, good. I passed that test. All right, let's show the 18-inch one. So now this is really for a lot of people getting down closer to the sand bed. So if you had a coral growing off the sand bed in a lot of tanks that are 24 inches deep, this would be, what's hitting that coral, that 5 to 6 inch high coral off the sand bed. So you want to pull that one up, Vincent? So this one's even more amazing to me. It's just what a great spread you get, what great evenness you get. And right down there in the sand bed, I can tell you right now, in my sand bed, accident frags come down there, and I'm running the SKY, of course, many of you know. Accident frags drop down on the sand bed. I'm horrible at cleaning up the sand bed, and I've got colonies acropora colonies that are just growing like softballs now down, on the sand bed. In this kind of, I don't have mine at 100%. I have them about 85%. So certainly around that 150 to 200 par range, and it's growing stuff right there on the sand bed.
Yep. Yeah, it's a fallacy that acropora corals generally require more light than, say, soft corals, at least based on the limited research that I did when I was in Hawaii. I looked at the soft corals and some of the stony corals. I shouldn't say acroporas per se, because I never actually tested those. I didn't have access to them in Hawaii. But a lot of the SBS corals, they would, they would do just fine with a lower light level.
Okay. Let's, Vincent, why don't we throw up, we have emulated with the Sky a preset for AB+. Why don't you throw up the spectrum chart with that, and then we'll look at the bar chart after that. So this, when I went and pulled this up, it looks like we got pretty close to spot on this. What is your thoughts in this kind of a setting? Do you run this setting on your tank, or what setting do you run?
In the morning, I run the coral growth preset, and I run that for about 4 hours, and I ramp it up. And then in the afternoon, I go with the all blue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
this is the one, Dana. If you're not, this is the one that a lot of people are familiar with running. That's why I had them throw it up. I don't know if I snapped the all blue one for you or not, Vincent. Did I throw the all blue one up there so we can see that? And when he's talking about the coral grow mode, that's basically all channels at 100%. Doesn't mean he's running it at 100%, but it means that all the channels are at their even peak. So here's the all blue mode, and you can see a couple of bumps down there in the near UV to UV, right? So,
yeah, actually, I like that one because the corals that I have fluoresce really, really nicely under the all blue setting, and that's just a personal preference of mine. So, and based on the corals that I have. Right,
right. So the numbers on the left are just relative, right?
Right, right. Those are the ocean optics spectrometer reports and counts. I could convert that over to.
It's fine. It's relative. It's relative is what you're looking at.
Yeah, right.
So pull up the bar chart for AB.
Sorry.
No, I'm talking to Vincent to pull up. So here's the AB+. So you also did these bar charts, which I thought were really helpful for people to look at, like in the different ranges, how much intensity you have really in these different ranges. Again, pay no attention really to the left-hand y-axis, but you can look, I think, a little bit more easily at the relative intensities where the light is. Again, this is on the AB+. One of the things that we did, Dana, with the coral grow mode, which is more or less everything's all on 100%, more or less, is we tried to make, when you put all channels on this light at 100%, and then at whatever intensity you want overall, to hit probably what I would call the sweet spot of look that most people desire, in the reef keeping world. There's some that are going to like it a little more white, some are going to like it a little more blue, but in all of the trade shows and stuff, it seems to be the setting with the way that we've curated what LEDs go in the light to be the way it is. And there isn't any red LEDs in this, by the way, in this particular light, as you know. So. What other things, anything surprise you at all in the testing or in the running of this light? Anything that was pleasantly or negatively even surprising out of running it?
I like the ease of mounting the lights. They're fairly lightweight. I have a suspended ceiling in the lab, and I have to run a 2x4 at the top of the ceiling to mount these, and I don't like putting a lot of weight on the suspended ceiling. So, there are some lights on the market that can weigh up to 30 pounds.
Oh, jeez.
I had a little concern about the suspended ceiling trying to support that much weight. I get 60 pounds in a small spot.
Right.
But these are much lighter. They were easy to mount. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little feedback right now.
Huh. I don't know. That must be something from the internet or something. You're hearing your own voice come back out on you?
Yeah, it just started, as a matter of fact. Okay, I'll try to work around that. I was surprised at the number of presets. I wasn't quite expecting that.
Okay.
So, yeah, that was pleasant. You know, if you don't want to sit there and do the custom spectrum, and you've got the option to do that with this light. If you just want to go with a preset, you know, it makes it pretty easy, and you could just scroll through these and pick out the color that you like without having, you know, play with the little sliders and all that sort of thing. Although I did that, but you know, as it turned out, that I went ahead and went with the coral growth and the all blue. So it works for me, but you've got plenty of options with this light.
So mounting, since you mentioned it, and since I am a marketing person, I have to at least mention that in a few minutes we're going to let you know when you can buy these. And I do believe, especially for some of the lights out there, the SKY is going to make an incredible upgrade, especially those of you running, for instance, an Ecotech Generation 4 or Generation 3 or before. And one of the things that we did to make it really easy for you to upgrade, since you mentioned mounting, is that we actually made it so you can mount even on the previous version of the Ecotech mounting hardware. And we did have some people who said that they should have some concern because it's going over the fans. But there is enough clearance. We have done the testing with this. If you do run it in a 120-degree canopy with hardly any ventilation, yeah, you might have some issues. But that's going to be the fringe of people. Almost everybody won't have any issue using this standard mount. That there's a ton of those out there already, and as well as the latest mount will work. The one that goes over the top, the kind of arching one, will both work. And there also is a wire mount, which is probably what you're using, a cable mount, Dana, to hang them from the ceiling, which is quite nice. It's black and goes on there. So, all right. Well, I'm really excited to see ongoing results, Dana, from what you're doing, and how your tank grows out. Please share with people on Reef to Reef, like your tank and your setup and the lights. You're more than welcome to do so. Everybody wants to hear about it. I'm going to tell all you guys out there, bug Dana on Reef to Reef. Tell him he's got to get this information out to you guys and answer your questions and all of that. It's a super exciting time for us, Dana, really, with this light.
I don't do endorsements, but I am using this over my aquarium, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, it says a lot to us, absolutely. And as I said, that was not something we even asked for you to do, and we're so happy that you have made that choice. And until somebody knocks us off that pedestal, we're going to enjoy that position. Let's just say that for sure. So
maybe a while.
So for those of you that are out there who want to be like Dana, okay, and put the SKY over your tank, upgrade your existing lights, maybe you've got a new build going, who knows the reasons behind, you just want to get the SKY. I'm happy to announce right now that the SKY will be made available for sale in just a few hours at 9:01 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. That's 12:01 a.m. tomorrow, Eastern Daylight Time. And they'll be made available for pre-sale, basically, because they will not ship until a week later. So next Monday, 7.5 days from now, they will be shipping from all of the outlets, both the online outlets and then the local fish stores themselves also can either deliver or ship them to you. So for the local fish stores that are out there, many of you might be closed. Maybe some of you will have your phones ringing off the hook from your VIPs. But come 9:01 p.m. tonight, they will go up for sale, and you guys can have at it. We're wondering whether or not they will still be available by morning. We will see, and we'll take it from there. So lots of people want to get them, Dana, and you're gonna have a lot of people on that Reef to Reef thread. They're gonna be asking you questions, man. So you're not gonna get a break.
Yeah, but bear with me. I'll get to you as soon as I can.
What, you mean it's not a great paying gig for you? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
other things going on right now. Let me leave it at that.
Yes, absolutely, man, for sure. Well, we really appreciate you coming on, Dana. We're going to let you go now, and hopefully we can have you on again down the road
Sure.
and talk
Sure.
more lighting stuff. And maybe we'll get lucky enough to have some other expert on here along with you, like Ryan, you know, and talk lights, talk about all the stuff that's out there and all the new things that are coming along. So thank you again, Dana, for joining us, and
Thank you.
we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Take care.
All right, Dana, we'll see you. All right, guys. Well, as I said, the skylights are going on sale here in just a few hours at 9:01 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time on Bulk Reef Supply, on saltwateraquarium.com, on marine. Oh, that's right, on Bulk Reef Supply, and Premium Aquatics, Aqua Cave. I guess that hits pretty much all the main ones, and then also your local fish stores. So go check them out, pick them up, and I can't wait to see you guys installing them next week and talking about it online. And as always, you can engage us through our Facebook group or on the YouTube channel and pass this video around, let people know all about the Sky and hearing Dana's bright words on all the stuff that he's doing with it, and look soon for him to release an actual review on this. And if I was a guessing man, Bulk Reef Supply is probably going to release here very soon some other information and data on the Sky as well. So until the next time we have a live, might not be too far off in the future. Take care, guys. Enjoy those fish, and we'll see you soon. See ya.